Rokket. So before the new box was released, I was pretty skeptical about this art type, as all the pre-box combos and test hands and just strategies the community was coming up with all just looked really meh. But now the new box has been released, oh boy has my faith been restored. This art type looking like it's well and truly on its way to potentially being a top tier art type. Turns out having a skill that can just search Lancea and then dump 2 dragons of basically any kind straight to the graveyard is going to have its uses. And because the skill is so loose on which dragons you're actually allowed to send to the graveyard, it's led to a whole bunch of creative deck building throughout the community, which I wish Konami would do more skills just like this one, as it makes deck building a hell of a lot more fun. So without further ado, let's go check it out. So here's today's deck list. But apparently 40% of people watching this aren't even subscribed to the channel. So if you guys are new around here and find yourself enjoying this kind of content and think you want to see some more deck lists or some more videos from me in the future, please do remember to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel down below. Alright, let's jump into this deck list. So what is new in Rokket? Well, honestly, there is a lot to go through, but let's just start off with the brand new skill, your Borreload Link. Alright, so this skill has 3 effects. The first one is, during this duel you can normal summon or send monsters whose sum of attack and defense equals 4000 without tributing, which is obviously aimed towards the brand new dude here, your double Disruptor Dragon, which we'll talk about in just a bit. Alright, the second effect is you can reveal 1 level 7 or higher dragon type monster in your hand, then send 2 level 7 or higher dragon type monsters from your hand and or deck to the graveyard, and add 1 monster whose sum of attack and defense equals 4000 from your deck to your hand. This turn you cannot spell summon monsters from your extra deck except Link monsters. So a skill lets you search for just any dragon, send any dragons to the graveyard, and additionally can also search for a nice artifact Lancea, which is insanely good in the current meta, so yeah, makes the skill a hell of a lot better. Alright, and last but not least, if a monster is on your opponent's field or in their graveyard, very important to note is if your opponent hand traps you, you can activate the skill on your first turn. Play 1 Link 2 Borrel monster from your extra deck to your field. So the most common use of this is during your opponent's turn, you'll just activate the skill immediately, slam this during your turn, after your opponent's turn. You'll activate Quadborrel Dragon, place it straight on the field, your opponent can't respond to this as it's just being placed on the field via a skill, then you immediately have a effect, you can just discard a card from your hand to pop one of your opponent's monsters. So, before you've done absolutely anything for your turn, you've already summoned out a monster to remove whatever bullshit your opponent has on the field. So, a pretty good way to go second, and like I said earlier, if your opponent hand traps you, you can put this thing straight on the field on your first turn, allowing you to go into Link 3 monsters like your Flash Charge Dragon incredibly easily. Alright, so let's go through some of the brand new cards, starting off with your Borreload Riot Dragon. Alright, you can ritual summon this card with Heavy Interlock, and it's a level 8 ritual monster. When your opponent special summons a monster as a quick effect, you can negate the special summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. Then you can destroy this card or 1 rocket monster you control. So keep in mind this special summon negate is very similar to how Halberd works, if you know exactly how this card works. Basically it only works on innate special summons, which if you don't know what that is, it will take a bit too much time to explain in this video, as this video is already going to be long enough as it is, so go Google it or something, but if you've seen Halberd canon, it's very similar to how this card works. Alright, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 Borrel or Rocket monster in your graveyard, destroy 1 card you control or in your hand, and if you do, add that target to your hand. So keep in mind, this card can recycle itself from the graveyard, so if you send it to the graveyard via the skill, you can use effect in graveyard, destroy a card, add it back to your hand, but it's also very good for later on during the game to either recycle itself or to recycle other Rocket monsters straight back from the graveyard, so a pretty powerful card. Alright, moving on, we have your double Disruptor Dragon, which is your main normal summon from your skill. Alright, you can tribute this card to target 2 rocket monsters in your graveyard with different names, special summon them in defense position. You can banish this card from your graveyard, add 1 Rapid Trigger, which is going to be your fusion spell, or add 1 of your Heavy Interlock, which is your ritual spell, from your deck to your hand. So a very strong card, you normal summon it, tribute it, bring back 2 rockets, and when it's in the graveyard you can banish it to search for either your ritual spell or your fusion spell, depending on what you want. Next up, we have your Exploderokket Dragon. Now keep in mind this card, its effect doesn't really matter too much. It's the same rocket special summon effect the other rockets have, where during the end phase, if it's destroyed, you can summon a rocket from your deck. But its main effect is just quick effect when it's targeted by a Link monster, does a bit of burn damage to each player, it doesn't really matter too much, and you're not going to worry too much about that. The main reason we're playing this card in our deck list is because it's a rocket, and it's also a level 7 or higher, meaning it's a searchable rocket via your skill, which is kind of useful sometimes, because sometimes you don't have enough rockets for your double Disruptor Dragon to revive, so instead you can search for this one for an additional rocket name, just to summon with this card, so that's the main reason we're using it, otherwise you probably wouldn't run this card at all. Alright, next up we have your Ritual spell, your Heavy Interlock. This card's used to summon your Ritual monster. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field and or destroy rocket monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal 8 or more. The monster special summoned by this effect cannot be destroyed battle with a monster special summoned from the extra deck, and is unaffected by the activated effects of any monster special summoned from the extra deck. So essentially it makes this boss monster just immune to your opponent's extra monsters, which is pretty strong, I guess. It means it still dies to back row and all that kind of stuff, and just dies to monsters like normal summon Blue Eyes and all that kind of stuff. But it does give it a bit of added protection, which is kind of neat. And keep in mind, it does destroy the monsters to special summon it, so if you're destroying rockets on the field, you'll trigger all their special summons during the end phase. And of course, it is searchable via your double Disruptor Dragon. Moving on to the extra deck now, we have two brand new monsters. First of all, your Flash Charge Dragon. Alright, once per turn if a monster is normal special summoned to a zone this card points to, except during the damage step, you can destroy one of those monsters, and if you do, inflict 250 damage to your opponent. So very important of course, because all 3 arrows are pointing forwards, so basically 2 of your opponent's zones are very hard for your opponent to use, as if they do use them, you destroy the card they put in them. Very powerful against various different Xyz plays or Synchro plays, it makes it very hard for your opponent to just set up a field to go into any of that, without their cards just being destroyed. Alright, when a card effect is activated that targets this face-up card, quick effect, you can tribute one monster, negate the activation, so also immune to things like Chalice as well, which is a nice little benefit. Alright, and the final new extra deck card is your Borrelsword Dragon. Alright, cannot be destroyed with battle. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target one attack position monster, change it to defense position. Also, this card can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. So normally this means you would swing in with one monster, then you would activate this card's effect to change that card's battle position, then swing in twice with this one, leading to a bunch of damage on your opponent. Alright, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect activation. Once per turn, when this card declares an attack on a face-up monster, you can activate this effect. Till the end of this turn, this card gains attack equal to half that monster's current attack, and if it does, that monster's current attack is halved. So this thing becomes a gigantic monster, and halves the attack of your opponent's monster, and it can attack twice, so basically, this thing is an OTK machine. If you get this thing out, it's very hard to survive it in Duel Links where you've only got 4,000 life points. And final thing I want to talk about with this deck list is all the weird cards that are in here, as obviously if you're a Rocket player, you're looking at this deck list and you're going, huh, those cards aren't normally running Rocket, so let's check out some of the more weird things in here. First of all, we have your Levianeer. So we're playing this card because it's a high level monster, so you can use it to trigger the skill. It's searchable via your Melody of the Awakening Dragon, which can also search for your Ritual monster, which frees up which cards you can send to the graveyard with the skill, as you don't need to send this thing to the graveyard to search for it if you just open a Melody, so that's why it's in here. It's also very good at just destroying your opponent's stuff. You've all seen what Levianeer does before, a very powerful card, so kind of nice to have a couple in here. Alright, then we have your Lancea. We're playing this because it's searchable via your skill, and it's an amazing hand trap in the current format. Then we have Nebula Dragon. This card, I was basically looking for just a light dragon of some kind that had some sort of synergy with the deck list, so we can send a light dragon to the graveyard for your Levianeer. So most of the time, it's just being used as fodder for a light monster for Levianeer to be able to destroy 2 cards, but it does have a nice added bonus where if it's in the graveyard, you can basically banish it to add back any of your level 4 rockets back to your hand, but like I said, mostly just used for Levianeer. Alright, then we have your Galactic Spiral Dragon, another card that's fantastic to send to the graveyard if you have the room to do so, because if you have some dragons on the field, you can summon it to the field as an extender. Very good card, also it's level 8, so it makes it very easy to just ritual summon into things using your Riot Dragon, for example. And I think that's it for all the main deck weird things. Yeah, it is. Alright, on to the extra deck, where there is one card I wanted to go through. Oh yeah, we're playing a copy of Buster Dragon. So, Be very careful with this card, as it's a very strong card to counter certain matchups, as it basically turns everything on your opponent's field into a dragon, which means against things like agents, which are super reliant on fairies, they can't even use their skill to change things to tuners because they need to be fairy monsters, so it's very reliant on fairies. This thing just screws that over, and it's also very good at screwing over things like the new plant deck, which requires plants on the field, just turns everything into a dragon, they can't play the game. So that's why it's in here. It's a really annoying floodgate for them. But keep in mind, your skill has a very nasty restriction. Once you use it, that means you won't be able to special summon anything but a link monster for the rest of the turn. So basically, you want to go into your synchro summon before using the skill, and then you can use it safely. It's worded pretty weirdly, where it makes it sound like you can't do any synchro summoning at all, but trust me, you can do the synchro summon, and it will still let you do the skill during the same turn. You just have to do the skill after you do the synchro summon. So a typical play would be something like your Rokket Tracer. You'd summon Rokket Tracer, activate its effect in response to either of your spell cards of any kind, summon out another monster, then you'll go for your synchro summon, and then you'll do your other rocket plays with your activate your skill, all that kind of stuff. So very good card at just dealing with specific matchups that require you to have like a certain type on the field, as this thing just changes all the types. Alright guys, I've spent enough time talking about this deck list. Without further ado, let's check out some gameplay showcasing this shit in action. Alright, so today I've saved 6 replays to share with you guys, all of which were gathered inside IKEA Games, and most of which were actually bullying agent players. I didn't mean for it to be an agent bullying video, it just turned out that for some reason I just kept bullying agent players. I think I went 5 wins for 5 out of 5 wins against agents, which was interesting. I don't think this deck is favored against that necessarily, but it just turned out that way, so I don't have 5 agent replays in here though. I think I've got 3 of them. It just, I don't know, for some reason I bullied a lot of agent players. Anyway, which a lot of you guys are probably going to enjoy, considering it's bullying a floodgate deck, and I certainly bully the floodgates, so should be pretty fun to watch. Alright, let's get into it. Starting off with our first matchup, which I believe was, as I said, an agent player. Tuning in the sky. Alright, so this guy was a bit interesting. So his turn takes a long ass time, so we'll speed up a little bit, I think. Searching for his Venus, does a whole lot of stuff. I'm not super familiar with exactly how the combos work for this deck yet, because I couldn't be, I haven't made a video on myself yet. I've been kind of avoiding doing so because I'm not really interested in a deck that just sets up floodgates and passes. It seems very boring to me, but you're right if it did like something else that was interesting, but I don't know, it seems kind of lame. Alright, summons out his Master Hyperion, copies a card in his deck to search for a card, grabs his Sacred Waters, whatever the hell that card's name is. Alright, makes his Roland, turns those two. I love how the better version of Infernoble is just fucking this deck at this point. I've been seeing very little experimentation with this art type so far, outside it just being played in agents. Alright, making his Pluto. Searching for a card. One day his turn will end. One day. And activates Summon Breaker, because of course he does. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to get rid of this Summon Breaker. So we're going to use our Melody to search for 2 cards. Borreload Link, sending a couple of cards to the graveyard for us, making sure to send a copy of the Nebula Dragon. I'm still not particularly sure what other cards I should be sending to the graveyard to banish with Levianeer, because normally I send a copy of this, because I just don't need to have multiple copies. I don't know, it's kind of hard which other cards to choose from. Alright, you're going to be discarding another card. He's going to be banishing this. Of course, we use the skill to just place this thing on the field, so very good way to remove our opponent's bullshit. We're going to banish 3, spare a summon our card to get rid of this Summon Breaker, and also get rid of his final removal card. Alright. Then he used Lancea. So I can kind of understand why he didn't use Lancea until now, because his monsters themselves require banishing, so it would have meant both of his disruptions were not usable, but I don't think he understands how important banishing is for this deck list. Like, if he just stopped me being able to summon Levianeer, I wouldn't have been able to deal with Summon Breaker, and then I don't even know what I would have done for my turn. I can't even use this thing's effect to search for the Ritual spell or Fusion spell. So, if you get Lancea, probably use it a bit sooner than this guy did. I really don't know why he waited so long. It would have stopped me almost completely. I guess if I got lucky, I had a Ritual spell on hand, I would have just, like, wiped his field, considering he would have made sure he can't use both his own disruptions, but yeah, I don't know. He definitely should have used it before I used this card's effect, though, that's for sure. Alright, heavy Interlock, ritual summoning our Riot Dragon. Normal summoning is just leaves one field. Yeah, I don't know about this guy. That could have been... If he just used Lancea way earlier, probably could have dealt with my field. Alright, moving on to Chris. I think Lancea is just a massive counter for this. I think he also probably could have set up his field better, where it was based more around and not relying on banishing himself. He's got Lancea in hand. I'm not sure how exactly you do that, because I don't play the archetype, but I'm sure you can set up somehow. Maybe try to set up the Infinable with the summon limit and the card in hand. Anyway, up against a Fabled player. Poor Fabled players. Alright, once again, Melody going to be searching for a Levianeer and a copy of the Riot Dragon. Skill going to be dumping a couple of cards to the graveyard, sending an Extender and the Searcher, searching for our Ritual spell. Rokket being placed in response to the Ritual spell. I'm going to pop my own spell card, summoning 2 Rockets to the field. Now I can Ritual summon out our Riot Dragon. These two become my Link 2. Spiral going to be special summoning, making your Link 3, your Flash Charge Dragon. Banishing 3 to then get rid of 1 card in our opponent's hand. Send our Rapid Trigger and Passing. So with this field, we've got your 1 lot of Disruption for anything placed in these zones, a 2nd lot of Disruption for a special summon, and we've hand ripped a card, and we actually also have a Rapid Trigger as well. Alright, so quite a nice little infield. Don't necessarily need to use the hand rip here if you want to save it for potentially a future turn to try to remove 2 things, but I quite like the hand rip in most scenarios. Alright, tries to target this card to remove it, so we're just going to turn it into the fusion monster instead. No biggie. Alright. They should really have an animation for this card on the Borreload. Those cards are really cool, so anyway. I think Rokket itself is just a really cool archetype. Tried to put a card in this zone. We know what happens when he puts them in the zones. We get rid of them. And use the other card to pop the other one. And that's basically it for his turn. He's got nothing else he can do. Alright, now he has a card in the graveyard. We can use our skill. Placing our dude on the field. Furious Dragon, reviving Link 2. And yeah, that could have gone into whatever Link 4 I felt like, and he was just dead on field. Alright, so hopefully from that duel alone, you've kind of got a good understanding of some good turn 1 stuff you can do with this deck. Because it can do a hell of a lot more than I originally thought it would. Because a lot of the initial replays people were showing before the release of this deck were, like, setting up 1 Link Monster pass, which is never going to be enough. So, thankfully, it does look like this deck does a hell of a lot more than that. Alright, so once again, up against another Herald player. I think this time, yeah, this is the guy Lancea beat. So we got Lancea. So Lancea is very annoying for this archetype. And we also had an incredibly rare brick, where we didn't open one of our, like, I think I have 11 different ways to search for or activate the skill in this deck list, so the fact we didn't draw any of our melodies or any high-level monster outside of Lancea, no high-level dragons, means we weren't able to use our skill either. But because we're under Lancea, we decided, you know what, let's just set up something that's going to piss off this Herald player over here. Also, we hard drew the Lancea, so we didn't need to search it with the skill anyway. So let's piss this guy off. Let's make ourselves a nice little synchro summon here. Of Mr. Buster Dragon. So now all these cards he tried to summon in here will all be dragons. And because he hand trapped us, we can use the skill immediately to just slam this card on the field and use that final resource to go into a flash charge. So even under Herald, under Lancea, we've ended on a pseudo Floodgate, we've ended on the Flash Charge Dragon, and we've got a Lancea in hand, which most of the time you'd search for via the skill. It's just I happen to open this thing anyway, so whatever. Using the Lancea right at the start of the turn so he can't banish anything, and now he's going to have a bit of a rough time trying to play the game. So summons a Venus, puts a dude on the field, summons another dude to the field. I think he realized at this point, or at some point, that he just couldn't, he wasn't able to turn anything into tuners, he wasn't allowed to. Tribute summons this thing to the zone by Flash Charge is pointing to, so I can just get rid of it. Summons out a thing and passes, he literally couldn't do anything, and I just have lethal on field. Didn't even need to use my skill this duel, I just had lethal, that's, poor guy. Yeah, I think the Buster Dragon is really funny. Sometimes, yeah, floodgates in this game are pretty cringe, but stupid floodgates like that was just like, your field is now dragons. It's like, I don't know. Maybe it's just funny because you're floodgating a floodgate deck, but I enjoy doing that. I enjoy making that floodgate player feel like shit. Get those summon limits and disgusting cards out of here. Speaking of which, this is another Herald player. This guy set up a different floodgate this time. This guy went for the spell card negate and didn't search for Lancea. All these players not searching for Lancea on Herald, they're actually trolling. Grab the Lancea, for God's sake. Yeah, we'll fast forward this guy a bit because he takes a good half hour to set up his field. Making the synchro, sending the blink at some point, and eventually searches for this dude, the Sky Scourge, tribute summons it. And now, I'm not allowed to use any spell cards, but he hasn't got a summon breaker on the field, and he hasn't got Lancea, so I really don't understand people setting up this field against decks like this. Just set up summon breaker, it's way better, but anyway. Going to use my skill set, or putting this dude on the field, he can just immediately remove it. So literally, before I've done anything, I've already removed his main form of disruption before the game's even started. So, a good choice, dude, by putting this on the field. Alright, Melody, discarding 1, searching 2. I shouldn't have discarded this spell card, by the way. I think later on I realized I wanted to keep one of the cards I sent to the graveyard in the graveyard. So I should have sent one of these other rocket monsters. For banishing with a Levianeer, I mean. So slight misplay there. Yeah, because I ended up having to banish this guy, I think, which I kind of wanted in the graveyard to search for the ritual spell. Didn't matter anyway, because I had lethal on field, but... There's Poppy's 2, and he's just dead, because I just normal summon the Rokket Tracer swing in, swap out for another one by using its effect, and he only had like 2,000 life points or something, so... He was dead on field, it's just... Technically was a misplay. But yeah, if you're playing Agent and you're not setting up Sunbreaker for that card, learn your matchups. Don't do that against a... Rokket. Rokket is actually just going to kill the card instantly. Alright, up against Mr. All Mate over here. I don't know if that's going to be like an All Might reference or something. Alright. So this guy was... I didn't know what this guy was even playing. I can't remember. Some sort of Xyz deck or something. Anyway, Interlock going Ritual Summoning. We send a copy of the... Galaxy dude to the graveyard because we actually just had the space for it. Summon these two out. These two become your Leap 2, your Dillingerous, whatever this card's name is. Spiral summoning itself back. These two become your Flash Charge Dragon. And passing the turn. It's not the greatest end field, it's actually a fairly weak one compared to some of the normal stuff we do. But it's at least something. Flash Charge popping the card that he summoned directly in front of it. I don't know if that was on purpose or he meant to summon it there, but just kind of let us pop it immediately. Lets us summon back a card from graveyard, which then lets us summon back another card from the graveyard, so... Probably not the best play for him to do that. Also lets us add cards back to hand. I don't know about him using these effects, man. Tries to go for an Evening Star, we're going to negate that. Alright. Summons the Ogre to the field. But he doesn't even get to destroy this card because it only destroys cards non-summoned from the graveyard, which this one was. Alright, summoning our card to the field, popping his monster, Melody searching for 2, Tracer popping the Melody, searching for 2 Levianeers, and yeah, he's so beyond dead. Alright. On to our final one, Mr. PK Peter over here. So I think you'll notice in most of these replays is if you watch back the games yourself and just look at what I'm doing, a lot of what I'm doing is probably like misplays or not proper, like the absolute optimal ways to do these hands. Because it's actually a very difficult deck to decide exactly what cards you need to send to the graveyard at what times, and to remember what cards you're going to be discarding with your Link monster and stuff. It's a lot of just like little things to remember that if you just sort of focus on what you're doing, you'll notice the mistakes very easily. Alright, so Riot Dragon popping to add itself back to my hand. Ritual summoning itself using the double Disruptor in hand. Alright, Galactic Spiral summoning itself. My opponent had a DD Crow this whole time. I think he probably should have used the DD Crow earlier on something else. I think there was something more important in there he should have used it on. But anyway. These should become my Flash Charge, setting Rapid Trigger and passing. Disruptor searching for the Ritual Spell during the before I end the turn. And up against Shadow. Still flipping up a Wendy, thankfully not a removal source, so that's pretty decent for us. Has a Super Poly though. Super Poly making a Winder, which doesn't matter too much because he can't even beat over this thing, so we don't particularly care. Can't negate it, of course, with some for a fusion spell, but whatever. Alright, had a terrible draw actually, drawing into Nebula Dragon, very bad. Thankfully our opponent seems to be bricking a little bit too. Quick launch, summoning this dude. Rapid trigger going to be popping it so that we can use the card we summon off of Tracer instead of using our ritual monster. Alright, making the Borreload. Yeah, Kanaria really should have made some animations of these two cards. They really deserve some. Alright, and here's a really cool interaction. This card, it's unaffected by, because it was summoned with the ritual spell, it's unaffected by extra deck summons, which includes your own. So if you have both these on the field, it's a really cool combo where this card can destroy your opponent's stuff without destroying your own, because you just keep targeting your own Borreload dude. It's really cool. So just keep popping whatever my opponent's got on the field, and we're good to go. Alright. Gonna beat over his last monster, summon my dude, and passing. Alright. So, he tries to summon out a Moon Maiden. We actually could have negated that if I wanted to, but I kind of just didn't bother. Popped his back row once again by targeting my Riot Dragon. Pop his card again, so many pops without having to remove a single one of my monsters, and he is just dead. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's replays. Hope you guys enjoyed them. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, plenty of new, as there's still a couple more new box videos I plan to make around all the new cards in the latest box. So if you're interested in any of that, remember to like, remember to subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. Laters.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob?
Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis.
Oh.